Hey everybody, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Z series 85mm f1.8 and we're going to be directly comparing that to the F mount 105 1.4 and also the F mount 70-200 2.8. Now I know that these lenses are quite different in focal length and obviously one being the zoom, but what I wanted to do is just compare them side by side in terms of picture quality to see if there's any difference in sharpness or corner sharpness, because you might be in a situation where you're currently shooting with a 105 1.4 with an adapter on a Z6 or a Z7 and you're unsure about whether you should get the 85 or not, and you might want to be able to compare that to a portrait lens that you already use. So I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of compare that to lenses that people use already for portraiture, which are obviously the 105 1.4 and also the 70-200 2.8. And I also know that they obviously give you different apertures. So we have a 1.4 lens versus a 1.8 lens versus a 2.8 lens. There's no common ground between these lenses at all, but that's not the point. The point is that photographers have different lenses available to them. Not everyone might have 85mm lenses available to them to kind of compare side by side. Some people might have a 70-200 and they might be thinking about an 85. Or they might already have the 105 1.4 and they might be thinking about having an 85 as kind of a smaller, lighter lens to carry around. Obviously the 70-200 2.8 is a massively versatile lens and lots of people use that for different things in terms of sports, wildlife, also portraiture as well. So I thought that also it'd be a good way to test kind of how this new 85mm lens stacks up against those two lenses. I'm also thinking that the two f-mount lenses, so the 105 1.4 and the 70-200 2.8 are newer lenses. Previously, when I've compared the 85mm Z series lens against the f-mount 85mm lenses, those 85mm lenses are not as new. They're not kind of a newer design or a newer generation. They've been around for quite a while. So to be able to kind of compare new f-mount glass or to be able to compare newer f-mount glass to Z series glass is something that I'm quite interested in personally, and I thought you might just want to come along for the ride. Obviously there's a massive price difference between these as well, so this is not kind of a normal everyday comparison, but I thought it might be useful just to see how these different lenses are comparing next to each other. I'm just going to show you the pictures at a camera in Lightroom, and I want you guys to make up your own opinions. I'll obviously talk about the pictures and think and kind of talk about what I think about the files in terms of sharpness and color and things like that, especially corner sharpness as well. But at the end of the day, I want you to make your own opinions from what's in front of you, and whether you agree with that or not is entirely up to you. That's your own opinion. Also, just before we go and have a look at some of these images, I just wanted to talk to you about some of the things that I've got coming up. So now that the 24mm prime has been announced, I'm in a situation where I can do kind of a full range test of the 24-70 2.8 zoom lens versus the primes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a full test of 24mm on the zoom lens versus the 24mm prime, 35mm on the zoom lens versus the 35mm prime, 50 versus 50, and then I'm going to do 70 versus an 85, obviously that being the closest I can get. And I'm going to compare those because a lot of people have asked, you know, how these prime lenses look great, but is it all worth it? Is it worth carrying all of those different prime lenses, or can I get very similar picture quality by carrying a 24-70 2.8, because this lens is particularly impressive as well. So that's again just a comparison that I'm really interested in, and that is a video that is on the way, so keep an eye out for that. Okay, so first of all, we have the Z series 85mm f1.8 on the left hand side, and then we have the F mount 105mm f1.4 on the right hand side. So let's go take a look at 1:1. So both here at 1:1, and there's not that much noticeable difference. They seem to be both equally as sharp as each other at 1:1, but that might change when we start looking at 2:1. So let's have a quick look at 2:1 just to see. Okay, so here we are at 2:1, 85mm on the left, 105mm on the right. And there is a difference. It's so subtle, but the 85mm is sharper than the 105 1.4 when it's wide open at 1.4, which is what you would kind of expect because it's wide open at 1.4. So to be this sharp at 1.4 is pretty impressive. Yeah, we can see that the Z series 85mm is sharper than the 105 1.4 when the 105 1.4 is at 1.4. So quick look at corner sharpness, and as you would expect, the Z series in the corners is sharper, but nowhere near as big of a difference as we were looking at with the 85mm lenses. So the f-mount 105 is actually doing pretty well. It's only a very slight difference that we'd see it 2:1. If we were, realistically using this as real-world photography, and if we were comparing them at 1:1, it's hard to tell really in terms of sharpness and detail here. You can see the big difference in the depth of field. So if we look at the FX logos. So 105 1.4 at 1.4 is just slightly softer than the 85mm 1.8. Right, so 85mm Z series on the left at 1.8 still. F-mount 105 1.4 stopped down now to 1.8. So let's see, with the 105 being stopped down slightly, let's see if it's as sharp. So let's go look at 1:1 first of all. So here we are at 1:1, and they're pretty much identical. So let's go have a look at 2:1. Okay, so at 2:1 as well, maybe the 85 is slightly sharper, but this is such a huge, we're in here at 2:1. There's no way that without seeing them side by side, as a normal everyday photographer, in terms of sharpness at the center of the frame, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference unless you saw them side by side. But maybe the 85 is ever so slightly sharper. Okay, so let's check corners. Okay, the 85 is still sharper in the corners. So at 2:1, the 85mm is still sharper in the corners than the 105 is, but I've kind of come to expect that from Z series lenses, really. But it's still, again, such a subtle difference. Again, we're at 2:1 here, 85 on the left, 105 on the right. Right, so here we have both lenses at 2.8. So again, the Z series 85mm on the left at f2.8, and the f-mount 105 1.4 on the right at f2.8. So let's go take a look, see what they look like at 1:1. Okay, so at 1:1, there is no difference that I can see, as we would expect, because they're both stopped down to 2.8. So let's go have a look at 2:1, see if there's any other difference. Okay, so both stopped down here at 2:1, and they're literally identical. So much so, and we're here in the middle of the frame, by the way, so much so that we could maybe merge them together. Yeah. There is no difference at the center of the frame when both lenses are stopped down at 2.8. Let's go check in the corner though. So the Z series 85 is still sharper in the corners. Now that might not be very important for a portrait lens, but there we go. Okay, so real quick, both lenses here are f5.6, and the reason it's really quick is because guess what? Stop down to 5.6, they're still the same. So there's not much difference between 2.8 and 5.6. So we're going to move on to the 70 to 200, see how that performs. Right, so here we have the 85mm f1.8 on the left at f1.8. And on the right, we have the f-mount 70 to 200 f2.8. This is the newest Nikon 70 to 200 2.8, which is the FL. That 70 to 200 is set to 85mm, and it's wide open at the moment at 2.8. So it's 1.8 versus 2.8, both at 85mm. So let's go take a look. Okay, so at 1:1, there is pretty much no difference in the center, which is exciting, / interesting because it's a zoom lens, and this zoom lens is as sharp as prime lenses. At 1:1 with the 70-200 at 2.8 and the 85 at 1.8, there is no difference in terms of sharpness at the center. But let's go have a look at 2:1. So, in the center of the frame, at 2:1, the Z series 85mm 1.8 is pretty much identical to the F-mount 70-200 2.8 FL when it's at 2.8. Let's go check corners. Okay, so at 2:1, the 85mm prime is sharper than the 70-200 zoom in the corners, which again is kind of what we come to expect from Z series lenses. But there's no difference in the center. There is a bit of difference at the corners when you're looking at 2:1. Again, real world photography, you're probably not going to be looking at them at 2:1 all the time. Right, let's go take a look at both lenses stopped down at 2.8 to see if there's a difference then. Right, so now we have the 85mm stopped down to f2.8 and the 70-200 at f2.8 still, to see if there's any difference now between the 85 when they're at the same aperture. Okay, so at 1:1, the 85mm prime, which has now been stopped down to 2.8, is sharper. As you would expect, because it's been stopped down, we can see that it is the sharper looking lens in the center. The 70-200 is still wide open at its f2.8, but let's go take a look at 2:1. Now, yeah, you can see that the 85 is sharper because it's stopped down, but it's such a tiny difference that I wouldn't even, yeah, you're never really going to see that difference in real-term photography. I think the difference between these two lenses is not going to be sharpness, it's more about that aperture value, that obviously the 85 is going to allow you to get to f1.8, but the 70-200 is going to give you the flexibility of being at 70 and all the way to 200. We're obviously only looking at it at 85mm right now because we're comparing it to the 85mm lens. Let's go check corners to see if there's any changes there. As you would expect, at 2:1, the Z series prime lens is still sharper in the corners than the 70-200 at 2.8. So let's stop them both down now. We'll stop down to 5.6 and see if there's any noticeable difference then. Right, so both lenses now stop down to f5.6. We have the 85 on the left, f5.6, and the 70-200 on the right at f5.6. So let's go take a look, see what they look like. So at 1:1 in the center of the frame at f5.6, there is literally no difference between the two lenses. Let's go take a look at 2:1, and again at 2:1, both at f5.6, there is literally no distinguishable difference between the performance of the lenses. So let's go take a look at the corners. Okay, so the 85 is still sharper in the corner, even when the 70-200 on the right hand side is stopped down to 5.6. So the Z series lens is still sharper in the corner, but in the center of the frame, there's literally no difference whatsoever at all. Right, so I just kind of wanted to do a summary of what we've seen there. So obviously the 105 and the 70-200 2.8 are newer designs. They are much more expensive than the Z series 85mm lens, and you get very similar performance. So it's kind of good to see that those of you that still have existing f-mount lenses, you know there's still some really good f-mount lenses that are available, like the 105 1.4 and the 70-200, and also newer f-mount lenses. F-mount lenses that continue to be released will also still be fantastically good in picture quality terms. What it does really make me excited for is the Z series 70-200, because the existing f-mount 70-200 2.8 is pretty much the same performance as a Z series prime currently. So it'd be interesting to see how the Z series 70-200 performs, and I can't wait to show you that. But for me, my all-time favourite portrait lens is the 105 1.4, and I will continue to use that lens via the FTZ adapter. And then for people that don't want to buy a 105 1.4, or don't want to spend the amount of money that a 105 1.4 is, or the amount of money that a 70-200 2.8 is, you know that you could get a Z series 85 1.8, which would give you very similar performance in terms of sharpness and picture quality. But overall, I'm very surprised by just how good the f-mount lenses have performed versus the 85mm 1.8. Right, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you found this video useful. It's a bit of a wider scope comparison. Instead of doing the same focal length versus same focal length lens, I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of try and compare other portrait lenses to the 85mm lens. So I do hope that you found this video useful. If you do have any questions, then please put them in the comments below and I'll try my best to answer all of them. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.